Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Trainz Railroad Simulator, Trainz 2022. And today we're going to be taking a look at the previous iteration of Hatchet Creek from the Switchback, is it Switchback Trainz? Yeah, I don't know where to go from there. I didn't think that far through. But yeah, so we just took a look at the new iteration of Hatchet Creek that they just recently released, Hatchet Creek version 3. Now, this is a little bit different. Typically, I don't go over versions. Like, I don't look at version 1, version 2, because 9 times out of 10, that's an indicator that a route has been updated, not upgraded. So this is one of those exceptions to the case where version 2 and version 3 are two completely different standalone routes, set in completely different times. So it's still Hatchet Creek. It's still based on Hatchet Creek. You still have the same core railroad there, but this version, Hatchet version 2, is geared more towards the railroad during its operating life. So there would be a lot more activity along the railroad, a lot more trains, some more industries, stuff of that nature, which are seen here. Now, version 2 did come first, so there are some things that are going to look very different from the newest version, from version 3. And the route is also older. The entire build is older, so there are things that are going to stand out that look very much older. That being said, it still looks pretty darn good, and it's still a pretty neat little route. So Hatchet Creek is a 30-inch narrow gauge. Very, very odd choice. 30 inch is not a common sight in the United States by any stretch of the long shot. But 30 inch is not common, but notable in trains. It's notable in that 30 inch is mostly freelanced, which kind of gives you a perk and an irk. So the irk is there's not a lot prototypically out there for 30 inch. However, given it's freelanced, it gives freelancers a awesome opportunity to just kind of go ham and do whatever they want. And that's kind of what we see here. This railroad's kind of loosely based on the narrow gauge coal lines of Pennsylvania / the Northeast, such as the East Broad Top, and you can definitely see that inspiration along the route as we take a look at everything. So yeah, it is freeware. Don't have to pay for it. You don't even have to pay for most of the rolling stock. Or actually, you don't have to pay for any of the rolling stock, now that I think about it. I can't remember. I don't think there's any 30-inch stuff that's payware, anywhere. So yeah, this is one of those fun opportunities for entirely freeware stuff. So yeah, and we're actually kind of starting off exactly where we were when I did the Hatchet Creek version 3. Now, I'm not going to try to butcher that name, but this is where we're at. So you can see it in the video, now you know where we're at. You'll recognize the mine. The mine is actually present in the other route as well. It's a very prominent feature. One thing you will see stands out very noticeably is the vegetation compared to the old route. All of the vegetation is older, stacked 2D trees. These crisscross trees. They're older. They're not terribly great by today's standards, but again, looking at this from the viewpoint of this is an older route. Kind of got to expect some of these assets to be older. It still looks pretty decent. And it's Trainz 2022 that I'm on right now. It's fairly easy to go in and swap these trees and stuff out if you really want to. You just do a mass asset swap. But that is definitely one of the first things that'll stand out between the two is the difference in vegetation. The assets used are very noticeably older here. Again, not awful, but they definitely look old. They definitely look dated, and I've never been a fan of these crisscross trees because you look at them at the wrong way and they look shiny, and now they're in a shadow, and now you've got both. I don't care for them. Not my favorite. Now, the other side of life, it's got some of the same assets. So you'll notice the town setups are recognizable. They're not exactly the same, but they're recognizable. I'll say right off the bat, I like this church better compared to the newest version of Hatchet Creek. This church doesn't have an auto sound in it that plays the bell all day, every day. Now there are some assets that don't play too well, like our Cadillac here with green chrome and green windows. It'd be what it be, but they're not too terribly noticeable. I am quite happy with the nice usage of people around the route. So there are people here, there, and everywhere. There are vehicles here, there, and everywhere. I wish they'd gone a little bit lighter on the grass, especially given that this is supposed to kind of represent the railroad in operation. Not quite like the newest version of the route where the railroad is kind of in its dying throes. It's more geared towards like maybe it was converted or maybe it was sold off and now it's a scenic railroad. Doesn't see as heavy usage. The grass overlay kind of makes a little more sense for that. But for this version, in the kind of still thrashing, still operational railroad, I'm not a big fan of the grass overlay everywhere. It's just not my thing. But the town here is kind of recognizable. Again, there are some things that have changed. Not gonna lie, I kind of need the other route pulled up to be able to kind of go back and forth and be like, here's what's different. But we're not really aiming for that because again, this is a standalone route, so you can have both routes and play either one at whatever time you want, and you know, go from there. So again, it's an older route, so some things don't play well and some things are noticeable. We got a ground texture here that is either missing or just not there at all. Town looks fun. Now, the character usage is not as heavy as it is in the newest version, which is a little sad. You know, like the newest version, this little downtown area here, it's got people walking up and down the streets. I like that a lot better. Again, it's something I harp on. Characters and cars, even if they're old assets, they make the route look far more alive whenever they're used. Yeah, some of this stuff in the newest version, they're definitely old assets. And same story here. I mean, this truck is very old looking. I mean, it might have been made in a more recent time, but it's very old looking. You know, it's very angular with pixelated photo texturing. But again, at least there's characters, at least there's vehicles. It still makes a difference. It makes the route look far more alive. So I do wish there were more characters used. That's kind of big noticeable thing number 2. Vegetation and characters, very different from the other route. Now you can see back here we've got some industries here, which on the new version of the route you will note that this track comes back here and kind of ends. On this version we actually have industries back here. So we got a cattle industry and what I would assume is other farm products. So probably something like beef. It's probably a butcher right here, so it's beef products, and then probably farming products of various sources, fruits and such. So that's nice. It's kind of cool that it crosses over the Y here. So you got your runaround Y back here, which is still present in the newer version. I don't remember if this train shed is present. But yeah, so that looks pretty neat. We'll go ahead and get a train going here just for giggles and squiggles. Odd. I have the character, but it's not assigned to a train. Here, let's fix that. I want to be able to swap around. Let's sure giggles and squiggles. We'll get a train going along. So we have a train moving. Once again, some recognizable scenes. Here, the split off here, and then the track on the new version just kind of ends off here, like kind of goes off into the distance. Rocks are overgrown and whatnot. But this is what is back here. So this is a lumber yard, kind of a logging camp. I hear those stupid crows. I hate those crows. But yeah, so we got an actual little logging camp back here, which is set up pretty decently. It's kind of entertaining that you have a log loader over here for loading up the logs, right? And a sawmill right across the way to unload the logs. One could just pull the log over here. Nah, I know I'm probably thinking about it a little too hard. It's just one of those logical things that kind of pops out at me. There's not a lot of... It doesn't make sense. It's not a point. But it does look good. Again, this is what was back here on the new version of the route. You'll note that, you know, the area still looks like it's been logged out. A lot of trees and whatnot are removed, but I guess, what on earth? Oh. I don't know why that audio sounds so odd. That audio cue is wild. But hey, that's kind of cool. So I've actually used these assets a couple times. So there's some guys like sawing a tree down. There's a dude over here cutting one down. And they're actually animated, which is really cool. A couple more. So this is kind of fun. You know, we got some characters actually out here doing something. And you gotta stop and look for them. But once you stop and notice them, that's actually really cool. I hate these crows. Gosh, I hate these crows. For this very reason. Sitting here trying to do this and these crows just constant. Like, that audio cue is constant. It wouldn't be so bad if it was like cued when you got close to it. Maybe it did it a couple times and shut off. It's more that these crows just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going. And then the audio tries to fight over each other. But, yeah. So we got a nice big logging camp back here. It actually looks filled in. There are some newer assets that have been released that would fit a little better, that one could replace. But again, this is an older route, so we got to look at it in that eye of some of this stuff was new when the route was built. So that's kind of cool. So let's oogie back over here. Here's a tunnel, a recognizable tunnel. Yeah, it looks funky. I'm not going to hate on it too much. Again, I know how much of a pain it is to attempt to make tunnels in Trainz. I've never understood why over the years certain aspects of route building have not been improved on in the slightest. And tunnel making is one of those things. In 3D is never bothered to look at improvement on route building in this way. It's like one of my biggest gripes with new iterations of Trainz. It's one reason I kind of got out of it, because I never saw the big difference like between 06, 08, 2012. I didn't see huge advances and changes. Not enough for me to go, oh goodness, I should buy a new one. As somebody that wanted to play with route building. So yeah, I can't really hate too much on the tunnel. It is noticeable. The hole is there, while the track's over here. But again, it's an absolute headache to get tunnels to line up right in Trainz. So I won't hate on it much. That's kind of a game developer problem. Something that they should have looked at updating a long time ago. Now there's a little bit of difference here. This is that recognizable kind of a, what do they call it, a camp. The flag stop's still here. With kind of some track work and whatnot, but the siding for the coaches is not. So that is something that would have been added, I guess, when the railroad became a scenic railroad. There's also a different building used. I don't hate this setup. Like, this is still a pretty decent building asset. But I will say that the new one looks way cleaner. Way cleaner. Again, this one's not bad, but the latest version definitely looks better. Like, this is a huge improvement. Still have the beach down here. Still kind of have that same beach setup. Some things are noticeable that haven't really changed. This is kind of cool. A steamboat out here. Huh. There's no steamboat over here. I guess we're going to be like lake tours or something. Yeah, this is a recognizable scene. Again, it's definitely been vastly improved in the new one. But it's recognizable. A big, tall wooden bridge. Trestle. Turns into a steel slash wooden trestle. Still got that recognizable waterfall scene. But got old boy fishing back here. That looks pretty clean. You know, I noted that in the other one too. This farm just kind of looks a little barren. And we've got some actively kept up fields here, but the farm itself has no equipment or clutter around it, no people. That could stand to be filled in. Again, it's not awful, it's something that I can do, but this is kind of one of those things that's noticeable. Well, you think it's wildly windy with that. Here's kind of a fun scene. So this is one of those little flag stops on the way, and in the newer route, it looks like it's kind of a camp. So we got the cemetery, that's still here, but we got like a campground, some like cabin looking areas. And in this version, it's like a little growing town, which is really neat. Like, I love these building assets. This is a really cool kind of take. Something you don't see a lot of Trainz devs use very often. I feel like it's granted, I will give credit where it's due. It's not something you think about until you see it, but there's always buildings being built. There's always construction going on somewhere. And most routes don't show that off very well, if at all. Again, it's like I said, it's not something you really think about until you see it, and then you go, ah, I know what I'm missing. And this route's got it. This little town right here actually looks like it's, you know, kind of in development. We've got building going on, and vehicles and people. That's kind of fun. Somebody died. But, yeah, we got vehicles, we got people, we got construction, we've got buildings that are maybe old and dilapidated being updated into whatever this is. You know, it's really cool. It's kind of different. Like I said, you don't see it very often. So this is a fun scene, just kind of as a whole. Some of the newer assets available, this could look really neat. Those recognizable scenes from the newer one. We have this dual kind of long sweeping curve on a wooden trestle. Now we get to where another recognizable scene. So in the new version, there's kind of a 2-track locomotive shed over here. And then we've got the Y with the train station, and then there's like a bar off over here. And then a lot of this is not here anymore. It's kind of neat. Gas station's still here, but there's like a Dairy Queen that's popped up over here. And yeah, now it is what you see it is right here. We got an industry right here. The White Horse Inn. Got another locomotive shed, kind of a set-off siding here. It's not exactly the same as the new version, but it looks fine. You know, railroads develop over time, so they might have found that a single track here wasn't good enough. They needed a dual, so they got rid of it and built a dual. Again, we still had the Y here, still had the train station and whatnot, but in the newer version, you have the Y, and it kind of ends right here before it goes across this lake. And the bridge pylons are still here, but the bridge is not. So this is kind of cool. Now it is kind of entertaining that they designed it like this, because I mean, it kind of makes sense, you know. You want to be able to run your boats through somewhere, so it's a wooden trestle, and then it's got this spot with a covered bridge, and the covered bridge is under construction. So again, this is really cool. I am a little bit sad looking at this now that this isn't kind of a scene that was incorporated into the new version. Because covered bridges is kind of fun as a whole. Covered bridges in railroading are extraordinarily rare today. Like these wooden covered bridges like this are very, very, very rare. For obvious reasons, but wood does not stand up to the test of time particularly well. You know, wood decays. Wood decays pretty rapidly after it's been cut down, unless it's actively taken care of, and even then, it's still going to decay over time. But this is pretty cool. You know, you got a guy over here painting, and got their carpenters still working their way across, adding the paddling. That's a really neat scene. Guys out here fishing, got their little their fishing hut, stream, keeping the pond filled, kind of swampy area. And then back here, This is turned into a railroad museum in the new version. Now this is kind of, I remember noting that too. It was kind of odd that they had opted, they had this stretch here that was still narrow gauge, and then all of this turned into standard gauge, which I thought was kind of odd. And I remember why I thought it was kind of odd, because this is all part of the, this is a mine that's part of the 30 NG, or the 30 inch. So one would think that this would still be narrow gauge back here, but it's not. So yeah, I remember thinking that was kind of odd. But yeah, so we got another train station back here, another flag stop, and kind of a small community here that I would assume is geared towards the coal mine over here. They probably work the coal mine. It's not as filled in as it could be, like the newer route. You know, there's no automobiles over here. There's no characters used. It's just kind of empty. Zoom out here because it's got a tunnel and it keeps on going through the tunnel, and back to here where we have another coal mine and another portion of the railroad. Not really recognizable because this is not here on the remake. Like, all of this is just overgrown. You can see kind of like the hints of maybe the railroad was here at one point, and now it's long overgrown and dilapidated. And in this version, it's very much still here. And again, another mine back here is a train station. And it's kind of the same story, though. It's definitely not as filled in as the more prominent areas are, or the more notable scenes, like over there and whatnot. Not as many characters, not as many automobiles, not much variety, clutter, or anything. But it is back here. I remember, though, you know, this mine's still kind of here, old and dilapidated. And there's a couple tracks back off here that are overgrown and whatnot. A couple laid over hoppers that are here in the new version. So this is pretty cool. So yeah, this is like an entire section here that was functional and is no longer in the remake. Zoom in. Speaking of track marks, it's one of those noticeable things too that I'm not a big fan of. It's all too common. The lack of track marks along the route are kind of frustrating because it's hard to look at some of this and go, okay, I know exactly what that would be or should be. It's kind of cool. So the oil field is still over here, just with older equipment. It's pretty neat. And it's actually got, you know, people and characters around it too. Pretty neat. But yeah, I wish there was more track markers used. Well, here's a fun scene. The car gave out. And somebody took the time to actually set somebody sitting on the car here. It's pretty cool. It's interesting. I didn't know these cars were running. Oh, that's cool as balls. Huh. Never realized that. Noted. We end up at our end of the route. We got the train station, big noticeable train station. It's a lot more filled in the newer version, more like a scenic railroad probably would be. It's much more active looking, whereas this is more of a day-to-day life kind of train station. But yeah, this area is pretty recognizable, pretty unchanged on the whole. There's some things that are noticeable, like here where the Y comes over here, and then we've got this kind of siding set out back here, but even in this version, this siding back here is unused. It's kind of interesting. Maybe like there was a prior history to the railroad as maybe a logging railroad or something, the way that's set up. Which, you know, as a whole is kind of cool. So you just kind of see this slowly disintegrate. Like this whole thing's gone. This whole building here is gone. The track is overgrown and barely there in the other route. It's kind of the same story here. So that's kind of cool. But once again, like this whole operation right here, very recognizable, pretty much unchanged. On the whole, like the track work's still the same, the buildings are the same. Very noticeable. But the town has been upgraded as it would. There's an asset that may or may not belong. I don't know. Actually, yeah, it might. For a minute I was like, that looks a little too new. Oh well. Continue back here, and in the original route, this is very overgrown. This whole yard's just kind of like unused. Whereas here, continues back here, and we recognize the coal tipple. So all your coaling industries, you load your coal cars and whatnot, bring them back here and unload them. Now, what's really, really weird here is, in the new version, this is all trucking. Now it looks like an old railroad that has been paved over and 18-wheelers have taken over, which makes sense, you know. That's something that probably would happen. But in this version, it's a transfer. So there would be like coal cars lined up down here, and train it back into here, dump your coal out of the 30-inch into here, which is very noticeably narrow gauge. So it's an odd thing. Like, what would be the purpose? Why would you transfer from here to here into the narrow gauge? Why transfer from narrow gauge to narrow gauge when you could just transfer the car itself? Now, again, this is one of those things that's not terribly hard to remedy. Just do a mass asset swap and swap this track out for standard gauge, because it makes a lot more sense as standard gauge. It makes way more sense as standard gauge. That is something that you would see, is a transfer from narrow gauge to standard gauge. Narrow gauge to narrow gauge it's just kind of pointless. You would probably just keep this curving and slowly drop altitude till you're to that altitude, and bam, you know, meet the track there. That's just my opinion, but you know, it looks pretty good. It doesn't make sense as narrow gauge to narrow gauge. It's also interesting that the track only ends back here instead of a full-blown like mainline railroad. Once again, same story with the tunnel. Tunnel doesn't look particularly great, but again, I can't hate on them because it's Trainz. Tunnels are awful in Trainz. And yeah, that's end to end on the Hatchet Creek version 2. One noticeable thing is the lack of speed limits around the route. Lack of whistle markers and whatnot, track markers. That's definitely an improvement. kind of blows my mind that we have all these older 30-inch assets that actually have clickety-clack sounds and halfway decent rolling stock sounds. And here we are in Trainz Classic in 2025, and we're lucky to get any sound with any of our rolling stock. It's kind of wild. Kind of an off the note of the head. Anywho, as you guys can see, it operates pretty darn good. And it's still pretty smooth. There's not really any track issues that I could say I can notice. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything else to really show or go over. So, definitely go check it out. It is still available on the Switchback website. So, I will post a link in the description on where you can pick this up. I highly recommend it. Again, it's a little bit older. A lot of the assets kind of stand out as older, but they're not too hard to swap out. They're not too hard to do an upgrade on, so I recommend checking it out. I think it's pretty darn cool, and definitely check out their other stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.